I'm trying to get back to recording like 3 videos a week, which has been hard because so many of my videos recently have been over 35 minutes long, like pushing 1 hour. So I'm gonna try and keep this under 25 minutes. You guys will see if I've succeeded. But I just wanted to talk about something a bit, I guess, more casual. Not really, because we're dealing with the same like right-wing garbage. There's not like a massive overarching point, but I wanted to talk about politics in video games. Now, I've made actually like loads of videos about politics in video games, but I just want to talk about like the shifts in political culture in video games and the sentiment of I do not want politics in video games. Politics in video games makes my game bad. And we're seeing that play out recently with Black Myth Wukong versus something like Concord. Now, Concord, if you guys haven't heard about it, many of you haven't, is a multiplayer hero shooter, which is a Sony first-party game, which is doing pretty badly. But it's been like in the culture war because the playable heroes have like pronouns. That's actually it, right? So this is being seen as actually like a very political game simply because it has pronouns. Now, I played the beta. There is like literally nothing political about this game. I know nearly every single game is political, like even Sonic the Hedgehog. From like what I straight up played and the story I was presented, it just wasn't political. Now there is lore. I assume the lore is political, but for most people who play this game, like it's as apolitical as a game can really be, as often is the case with multiplayer shooters. But because this is set in some sort of sci-fi fantasy world, there's not even like any parallels you can draw with the real world. It's not like X Defiant, which has taken stuff from like Tom Clancy games. So maybe you could read a tiny bit into it there. It's just nothing, right? Another game that's being celebrated is Black Myth Wukong, which of course takes like the monkey story that you saw in games like Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, and just, you know, if you know Chinese mythology, it's from that. Now, it's been controversial because it was found out, and it was a bit of a debate if it was real or not. They were giving access to streamers to play the game, but they had guidelines about what you could say. And it's not something many people had seen before, but it was funny to see the reaction, and that's what I want to talk about first, about like no politics in games. So this is just a screenshot of what they got. So do's and don'ts. Do enjoy the game. Don't insult other players. Do not use any offensive language. Do not include politics, feminist propaganda, and other content that instigates negative discourse. Do not use trigger words like quarantine, isolation, or COVID, and do not discuss content related to Chinese game industry's policies, opinions, and news, right? Because Black Myth Wukong is made by Chinese developers. So, yeah, they gave streamers access to the game. That's what they'd agreed to do. And why this is so funny, and you're going to see the discourse, Black Myth Wukong is being held up as some apolitical game, which is like the way to go, and it's Eastern devs. Eastern devs are now destroying Western devs, especially ones from East Asia. You had just traditionally Japan, and you had Stellar Blade made by a Korean studio, and now you have Wukong made by a Chinese studio. The problem being is, if you weren't born yesterday, you know for so much time there has been insane hysteria about Chinese corporations influencing gaming. I made a whole video over 3 years ago talking about this discourse because there's a Chinese company called Tencent, which back in 2021, I'm not sure what their stake is now. They had like minority stakes in like Ubisoft, Activision, Blizzard. It was like 5% or something. And people were freaking out about this, saying that like the Communist Party was censoring video games, and because Ubisoft would like make a different version of Rainbow Six for the Chinese market where they would censor certain things to do with like alcohol or like the afterlife and stuff, they were like, oh, they're selling out to the Chinese government.
What happens when a country's government has total control over what people can play? And more importantly, when that country is currently the largest gaming market in the world. China has become far too big to ignore. Problem is, China has a really long history of censorship, people disappearing, and attention needs to be paid to Tencent, the Chinese mega corporation that owns Riot Games, has huge shares in the companies that develop PUBG and Fortnite, and as of 2018, have at least 5% stakes in both Activision Blizzard and Ubisoft. They also host several major online games in China.
You know, I'm with Dan. I'm very disappointed at this decision. I thought you would take a stand for support free speech. making fun of a political figure in one piece of artwork in a good horror game shouldn't make the whole game get censored. People should decide for themselves. We do not live in China. We are not on a stringent social system where if you don't agree with the state, then you get, shut down.
Take the recent Chinese release of Rainbow Six Siege. Ubisoft removed or changed a number of aesthetic, UI, and background elements from the game in order to get approval in China. It's worth noting that all of the changes that were made were aesthetic only, but a large portion of the game's fan base was furious that anything would be changed to comply with a totalitarian regime halfway across the world. Ubisoft quickly reversed their decision after getting review bombed to hell by angry players, but it makes you wonder, how much of this is going on behind the scenes?
And now what we're seeing is, actually obeying a Chinese company's guidelines where you can't talk about the Chinese government or anything to do with coronavirus and not talk about feminist politics, that's actually good. And you would have also been seeing this Sweet Baby Inc. thing. They're talking about how they're censoring games, this consultant company that helps with things like diversity in games and sees if you're doing it well. They're saying that's censorship. When Chinese devs say you can only play our game if you don't criticize the Chinese government, apparently that's fine and gamers love it. So you'll see this today, and it's just so funny that a game that has been wrapped up in something like actual political discourse is now being held up as like an apolitical gem. And a game like Concord, which literally has like nothing to say and just has pronouns, that's being seen as like the worst thing to do with politics in gaming. So an article by Ryan Allen at The Diplomat, so Black Myth Wukong shows China's cultural soft power is no myth. So despite past critiques, Black Myth illustrates that China can produce soft power resources in these popular cultural and creative industries even under a stricter system. These constraints were evident with the game's launch. Live streamers were given a list of topics that they were not to discuss while playing the game. The lists of don'ts rankled reviewers and influencers, but the average gamer did not seem to mind, as the game still racked up record numbers of players. In fact, there's been a growing rift between gamers and the media sector that covers the industry since 2014. It seems that the People's Republic of China's sensibilities of no politics align with the sentiments of many young gamers today. These common sentiments seem especially true for young men who still dominate much of the console gaming market. An example of this disconnect comes from the lukewarm review of the Chinese game from the website Screen Rant, which listed as a con that the game was lacking in diversity, which has been mocked online. Gamers are simply happy taking control of a magical monkey flying around a mythologized Tang Dynasty China without connecting to modern political issues or culture wars. The whole discourse around these types of video games actually drives me insane because, first of all, I'm sure the actual story in Black Myth Wukong does have some sort of like societal commentary, even though it was made by Chinese developers. But regardless, let's just say it's a fun myth. It's like playing, I don't know, Immortals Phoenix Rising. It's like playing a game centered on like Odysseus or something. It's a game about Greek mythology. It's a game about Chinese mythology. No commentary about the US military industrial complex or something like that. It's just such an exhausting discourse that Concord failed because of pronouns and Black Myth Wukong is succeeding because it doesn't cater to feminists, and actually censoring streamers and not allowing them to talk about feminism or the Chinese government, that's actually a good thing now. That's actually a good thing. So I saw a YouTuber called Clownfish, and he made a video talking about this, which I was going to play, but I can't really be bothered. It's just the usual anti-SJW shit. But if you go into the comments, this is really interesting to me. They should add, don't try to colonize Chinese cultural heritage based on Western progressive narratives. Like, this is why this is becoming so, like, insane to me. China is literally the boogeyman for most American conservatives. And now anti-SJWs are talking about, oh yeah, don't colonize Chinese cultural heritage. Here's another one. Reject DEI group. Ignores games journalism. No feminist. Actual entertaining game. Yeah, I'm buying 2 copies. It's on my Steam list. I can't wait to play. And then someone defending the guidelines. It's not restricting your free speech to know when to speak and when to shut up, and what to talk about when it's appropriate and when it's not. That's called discernment. Sadly, it's a rare quality these days. People think if they can shoot off their mouth all the time about everything, they're oppressed. Those are totally rational, common sense requests, and hopefully it will help weed out all the posers who don't need to be in the gaming space in the first place. If I go to Kotaku in action, no feminist propaganda is a selling point in my book. They're also not allowing criticism of China. That's a lot worse than feminist propaganda. Feminism has done far more damage than China ever will, and I'm not a fan of China. None of that has anything to do with video games. I don't read a video game review to read about a country's politics, nor do I care either. I've seen people complaining about the free speech, about the no feminism bit. Pretty ironic. Also, to be honest, the do not talk bad about China comes from China. It's not really from them. So conservatives pretending they care about free speech, censorship, all that stuff. The minute a Chinese company says no feminism talk in your streaming coverage, they love it. Just ignore all the stuff they've been saying about China over the last 5 years in regards to the pandemic. Just ignore all the terrible stuff they've said about Chinese people as well. Now, actually, it's great. And let's put this into a different context. Let's say Ubisoft are releasing a new Splinter Cell game. And obviously, Sam Fisher works for the US government in Black Ops. Ubisoft gives access to many streamers to play the game. And in their list of don't, they say, please do not criticize the US government. Please do not say anything bad about Joe Biden. Please do not say anything bad about the US military. Please do not bring up neoconservative politics or something like that. So imagine that happened and that got leaked to the press. How do you think these people would react? Would they say, oh no, that's actually fair, to be honest? Like, the US government are making Ubisoft do that, so it's not a big deal. Actually, no talking about neocon politics, that's actually a good thing. It's actually not a restriction of free speech to make people agree to not criticize a government that might have worked with our studio to make this game. It's got nothing to do with free speech. Do you honestly think people would say that, right? Or if it was Activision with Call of Duty Black Ops saying a similar thing towards the US government who they do work with on Call of Duty games, and multiple people in Activision previously worked for the US government, you know for a fact they would not be defending this shit. And that's why it's so funny that although I've always known conservatives are hypocrites, being so hypocritical, they go back on their years-long crusade about Chinese influence in the games industry to start not only defending Chinese development studios, which I have no problem with, to start actually defending studios who tell streamers they actually can't criticize the Chinese government. It is actually just so amazing to see. And on Kotaku in action, I've seen so much unfiltered racism towards Chinese people, Indian people, and basically any group of people who isn't white. And then you get a post like this being upvoted, people being racist over Black Myth Wukong being a Chinese game. Anyone notice this? It's some kind of messed up cope and nationalism to discredit the game's massive success. Oh, it's just Chinese players pumping up the numbers. As if those players are some type of alien race or not human. Would this be the same situation if the game was from Japan? Of course they are. Woke people are the most bigoted, hateful people in Western society right now. I haven't seen a sliver of the hatred they spew coming from the opposition. That is just so insane. They just project their own behaviours and morally questionable mannerisms on anyone that doesn't completely adhere to their rigid totalitarianism. They might come across like whiny, snivelling little brats, and many or most are, but the damage they do to society is incomprehensible. In the past, and again, this is so fucking funny, in the past, social media and modern culture weren't around to proliferate the sort of extremism we now see on a global scale, which is why communism was updated to woke in a sense. The merger of snarky theatre kid hipster mannerisms with communist ideology is insufferable. So, need I remind people that these conservatives make absolutely no distinction between Chinese people and the Chinese government when it comes to things like COVID. These people make no distinction between Chinese corporations and the Chinese government, because that's what the whole Tencent fear-mongering has been about for years and years and years. But now apparently woke people, and woke means communist, they actually are racist against Chinese people because the woke people are communist. Are we just ignoring the fact that China is run by the Communist Party of China? And yeah, most people at high levels of corporations in China are actually in the Communist Party. So what is even this argument? Their worldview is so incoherent. So Western communists are ruining the world because apparently they're all racist and they're criticizing a game made by a Chinese corporation which has members of that corporation in the Chinese Communist Party. It just makes absolutely no sense. And you know for a fact, if this Chinese developed game, Wukong, had a whole narrative about the main like monkey thing being transgender or something, they would say, oh my god, the communists, they're infiltrating American society to push this subversive message. You know, they would say that in 2 seconds, and they'd happily make no distinction between the people who made the game and the actual Chinese government, right? But this is the sort of cope we're seeing, where they've just taken this game up as some sort of like anti-woke symbol. And again, it will never stop being hypocritical and hilarious that they're doing this for a group of people, mainly people from mainland China, that they've been demonizing for years and years, and have been saying the corporations from that country are actively ruining the games industry through minority stakes in traditional Western corporations. So not strictly related to Wukong, but I did see this post the other day. Should video games be political? Is like a survey. 30% of Indians say yes, 16% in Brazil, 16% in Mexico, 14% in the US, 12% in Germany, and 12% in the UK. That actually seems pretty low, to be honest, but I don't know the exact criteria. So obviously that article at the start was saying Chinese Wukong appeals to gamers because it doesn't have politics in it. And then you have stuff like this in the comments. Why would I take a temporary break from misery that is everyday life to see what some piss pants pussy thinks is important in a video game? Just let me have fun, you freaks. So the Prime Minister of India chimes in, being an Indian, I can agree to this. Every subreddit I go to, there's numbnuts saying games have always been political. I hate it. I don't even understand what these people have to gain from having politics in games, bro. Games should be fun and not political or educational. There are other ways to learn these. They should be fictional and should be worth the money paid. And any kind of harmful ideologies, including woke, or those who would confuse the children of their ideology or self-worth, should be banned. I play games to take a break from stuff like politics. That being said, how politics are used is very debatable. Metal Gear Solid executed this perfectly, showcasing the horror of war and how organizations profit from it. On the other hand, you have Spider-Man 2, where it's just smeared with identity politics. Look, I'm a strong independent woman, I don't need Spider-Man protecting me. My point is politics can be used as a tool to aid a game, but can also be used to damage a game. As a fan of all the Metal Gear Solids and a fan of both the Spider-Man games, like, again, these people are just so insane. How do you take away from the message of Spider-Man that its main message is, yeah, Mary Jane is a girl boss who doesn't need anyone protecting her, when they constantly work together as like a trio, Miles, Peter, and Mary Jane, to take down foes? Maybe she's like a little overpowered as someone who doesn't have like superhero powers and stuff, but I just don't understand. Like, you really have to look for this stuff and make it your interpretation to believe it. But yeah, like, clearly some people there saying, I play games as an escape from reality. And I actually spoke about this recently with Lord of the Rings, where I said I don't really like Lord of the Rings anymore as much because the escapist fantasy has just got boring to me as I've gotten older. I also totally agree. If you want games as an escapist fantasy, then play games which cater to that. Go play Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, go play Breath of the Wild, go play Mario or something, right? There are so many games out there, sports games, loads of them, some of the most popular ones, where you can just go in and take a break from reality. But the sentiment that we must pander to all these idiots who just can't handle any complex topics because they might actually have a meltdown is just such a bad way forward for the video games industry. And The Last of Us Part 2 was obviously like a perfect example of this. Try to tell a more mature story, and the online gaming community absolutely freaked out, saying it's ruined by politics, while not actually engaging with the political message of the game. They think the politics is just, oh, there's a lesbian couple and a transgender character. That's the political stuff. Not any of the stuff about Israel in the game, not anything about like various different historical conflicts or just themes of violence and stuff. No, the politics is just the LGBT representation. And there's two things really. If you really purely want escape from the real world, I don't know why you're playing The Last of Us. That is like one of the most depressing, violent games I've ever played in my life. But why would you be playing like a lot of these games? If you actually want a genuine escape from the real world, why would you play most serious games? Because even if they're not commentaries on society, they probably will reflect something you've seen in the real world. And also, I also reject things cannot be an escapist fantasy just because it has contemporary political issues. So I recently played Splinter Cell Blacklist. Now, obviously, I'm a communist. Splinter Cell Blacklist is like pure neocon propaganda in a political sense. The main baddie is just some random Muslim dude who used to be an MI6 who is going to do attacks on the US if they don't remove all US troops from around the world, right? And that might sound like an interesting premise, apart from the fact that he wants all US troops removed from global bases around the world. Never explained. Never explained like why he wants that. Never explained, do people support him? It's just like, oh my god, how could this guy even demand that? And it's firmly centered in this worldview of US is the best country on earth, because it's like Tom Clancy, right? So I play that, and despite all the problems with, most of the game being set in Muslim majority countries, so it's just playing into all that shit you got in the 2010s. Despite that, it still was an escapist fantasy for me. I'm playing as Sam Fisher, some like spy for the US government who's like the ultimate hero, good guy. He's just the best. He's just the best at everything, and there's nothing controversial about any of the bad stuff he does because he's doing it for the greater good. He doesn't listen to the president when he doesn't want to. He basically goes rogue but then gets forgiven because it was always the right thing to do. That's an escapist fantasy for me. It doesn't really matter that it's taken place in real locations. It's obviously talking about like geopolitical issues. It's still escapism because it's literally pure fantasy. Like, none of this is realistic beyond the aesthetics. It's just a bit of a joke. And politically, Tom Clancy games would obviously hate me. I was playing Ghost Recon, some of the older ones recently. It frames Central American rebels being against a Mexican, Canadian, and an American security agreement to shore up NAFTA. The rebels are framed as like the worst people ever. And you as the US government and soldiers, you're the good people, right? Again, it's something that's both a fantasy and telling me my worldview is probably bad and I'm evil, but I can still enjoy it as an escapist fantasy, and it's a good game as well. Like, I would say go play Splinter Cell Blacklist. It's a very good stealth game. I was impressed with the quality, but it's still escapism. So even if you're someone who's like, I do not want politics in games, it's just because you're so insecure about like your own political beliefs, you don't want them challenged. Like, I totally believe in my political views, right? They're an extension of my morals, and I am very, very comfortable in them. So I can play games that have like absolutely insane right-wing messaging and still enjoy them, because the game is both fun to critique from a left-wing point of view, and it is just a fantasy that takes me back to older times when, you grow up completely brainwashed thinking the US are the good guys. So yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Not completely structured. I've been talking about for like 30 minutes, so not a great job at making this shorter, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.